you can see spark. Welcome back. My name is Robert with Oakwood. Today we're going to take a look at my process to help troubleshoot small engines, air-cooled engines, anything with a spark plug per se or two. I'm going to take you through my process of elimination to figure out what is exactly going wrong. Okay, before we get started here, I have to make mention, because I'm guilty of this too, go over the basics such as the kill switch, is it on or off? Check the mechanical, make sure the trigger and everything's working, make sure you have fuel in the tank, make sure the hoses aren't leaking, and make sure if it has a prime ball, make sure there's fuel in it and it's not leaking. Okay, the simple things sometimes is what it is. Humans like to overcomplicate things all the time. So before we go any further, I just want to talk about a few things, just so you know, you can reference back to it and figure out what they are. Feeler gauges, if you're not familiar with it, this will help you set the valve clearance or the lashing for the valves. Typically, they set the intake for 4/1000ths and the exhaust 7/1000ths. On this machine here, believe it or not, they require 10 to 15 on the intake and 15 to 20 on the exhaust. It's kind of funny. And I've noticed that it's running a little louder with that setting. But we got a spark tester here. This is not a spark plug. It checks for spark to make sure your coil is firing properly. And also we have a real simple compression test here. Now, if you're going to go out and buy a compression tester, make sure they have the Schrader valve, and what that does is that traps the air in there. So when you crank it 3 or 4 times, it's going to give you a legitimate reading, consistent reading every time. Mine on this cylinders here, mine are about 150 psi right there. So that's pretty cool. So this is the basic tools in a socket, obviously. This is a 13/16 for a spark plugs for this machine here that we're going to talk about. I just want to go over some basic things that you're going to hear me talking about. Now, a compression test, I want to clarify something. This is just a fast and furious way to see, yep, nope. It's kind of sort of leads you in the right direction. The best test is actually a leak down test. What it is, it's got a gauge for a PSI coming in to the cylinder, and then it's got another gauge over here to show you what PSI is holding in the cylinder. Okay, and I think they talk about a 5% discrepancy. If you have 5%, that's usually the air blown by the compression rings and stuff on the cylinder, and that's usually normal, but that's the best way to see if you have a blown head gasket or some problems going on with the valves. And usually that's one of the two things, or a crack in the head. So you could have a crack in the head, or bad valve seats, bad valves, or bad head gasket on that. So we're going to come back to the spark plugs here for a minute, but I just want to start you off with a bad backpack blower. Hypothetically, let's just say this guy will not start. You're cranking and cranking and cranking. Now, this goes for lawnmowers, anything with pull rope, anything with a carburetor, a spark plug, whether it's 2-cycle regular gas, not diesel, gasoline. So a lot of times the mechanic will come in, take off the air filter real quick. They do a once over. They look at the switches, make sure the switch is on run mode. They check everything out, and then they may squirt it with starting fluid just a little bit to see if they can get the spark plug to fire. That tells them that the coil, there's a good chance the coil's working and the plug's working. Now that's going to lead them into the direction of fuel. So the filter in the tank could be clogged up. The hoses could be cracked. I have a wet spot on my my tank there. It looks like my primer ball is probably leaking. It did not like the freezing cold that I was using it in this past winter. Typically, you do things to test and rule out some other things. So if you can get it to kind of run, whether it's a push lawnmower, backpack, trimmer, mower, if you can get it to kind of start on ether, then you have somewhat of an idea of what direction to go to next. Now, we already looked over the simple stuff. Take it off the list. You check the kill switch. You made sure it had gas, good clean gas. Because a lot of times when we store stuff, gas turns into varnish and makes things a lot harder to start. So before we go any further, on all equipment that requires a spark plug, it's funny to me how many times in my life that I've just came to a spark plug and that was the issue. Now, not the spark plug itself, but the actual gap. You can get lucky every once in a while, and if this gap is too big and it's just not sparking like it should, that's the problem, okay? So if you don't have a gauge like this for this mower, it should be about 30 thousandths right there. If you don't have one of these, go get your wife's Macy's card or JCPenney card, or use your Home Depot card and check it like that. And that's about 30 thousandths. That will get you out of the woods. That'll get you going again. All right. That will definitely save you some time. So today we're going to be looking at this. This is the Exmark commercial V-twin 708cc here. This engine runs fine. I was just doing some maintenance on it, and I thought to shoot a video on possibly to help somebody figure out, troubleshoot their engine to get it going, running for the season. Now, the number one thing that I've ran into for engines not wanting to run cleanly the next season, it's usually gas, okay? Either you run the tank dry or you treat the fuel. All right. Treating the fuel helps. It's not perfect. It helps the startup for next year. There's a couple different brands out there. Stable is the one that I use, and I've had no complaints over that. But let's look at this engine here. Now, let's pretend that it's not even cranking. Okay, you're turning the key, nothing's happening. You check all your safeties and your handbars, your lap bars to push forward and reverse. Those are in position. You check the parking brake is on. The seat switch, you're sitting down on it. Some of them require you to be sitting on the machine to actually try to start it. So the first thing I would go to is actually the battery. Check your connections here. If these connections are corroded and dirty, they will not allow you the correct amperage to actually start the starter. It needs a certain type of voltage and amps to actually turn the thing, to actually everything to work, because the fuel pump works on the pulsation of the pistons to actually pump fuel. So before we get into the fuel pump, I want to make sure we can go over some of the things in the electrical system here. If you don't have a jump box or a charger, or go out and buy a new battery, and that way you'll know that you have a good source of power. The next thing, this goes down to a starter relay down here. You can't see it. It's a hot wire going from the battery, and then the starter to the other side, and then it goes a wire up to the switch there to actually bridge it over, and that's how you turn on the engine and crank it. Once you get it engine to crank, there's fuses and stuff down here too that I cannot get the camera down there to show you. But check out the electrical system. It's usually going to be 12 volt DC on most lawn equipment, unless you're running a liquid cooled some type of lawnmower. You may experience 24 volts, so just be aware of what type of voltage you're working with, and don't commonly mistaken it as 12 volt when it's a 24 system. So now you're getting stuff cranking. So what do? You remove the air filter. You remove this hose right here. You put this hose into a jar, then you go crank. Give this the opportunity to show you that it's going to pump fuel into the jar, and look at the fuel. If you see any like loogies, snot floating around in the fuel, get rid of the gas. It's bad gas, unfortunately. Change it out. So the next step, now that you know you got fuel flowing, you hook that all back up. Now you try to start it, and it kind of runs, but it's running rough. On the V-twin, you don't really know what cylinder it's running. This is cylinder 1, cylinder 2, just because of the placement, and typically that's how they are. If you remove the rocker covers, you'll actually see cylinder 1 or cylinder 2. Most engines are like this. There are a few that it's reversed for whatever reason, but we're trying to figure out which cylinder is kind of giving you the problem. So the first thing everybody does, which is smart, just pull the wire when it's not running. Make sure you shut it off and cool down just briefly so you don't burn your little digits off. Put the wire up in a safe spot, not up by the flywheel, just somewhere where it's not going to get roped up and caught up into the flywheel here. Start it up and see if it runs. Now, if it spitters and sputters and you say, okay, it's kind of trying to run, but not really, it could be that there's an issue over here. So how do we confirm that? We take this spark plug wire, put this back on, remove the spark plug wire on that side. Okay. Now you start it up and it runs. So what information is that telling you? What data? What's the data driven here? It's got compression. It's got good spark. It's running. Everything's working perfect over here. So now you know for sure the spark plug is going good, the gas is good, the electrical system's good, everything is normal over here, but your problem child is over here, okay? Because we just confirmed it. So the next thing I would do is take one of your spark plugs out of your cylinder that works and put it over here, swap them. Swap the spark plugs from one side to the next and do the same test. Now, if that problem moves over here to this cylinder, you know it's the plug. They do go bad inside, believe it or not. The spark plug does go bad inside, and you can just replace it by a new one and you'll be up and running, and it'll save you a bunch of headache. So once you confirm that it's not the plug and it's still kind of running rough, what else do you do? You could put this at top dead center. This is the flywheel for the pistons. Top dead center for number 1 cylinder. You can take some compressed air and blow inside. There's no air coming out of the intake and there's no air going out the exhaust. And what that means is both valves are closed right now. And that's what you want. I hear air and it's probably going past the piston into the crankcase a little bit, and you can hear it out the dip tube, and that's okay. You know, I'm not putting 200 PSI through there. This is just a quick way. Let me show you. If there's something wrong with your valves, you're gonna hear air come out the exhaust or the intake. Can you hear that? If the valves aren't set right when this is at TDC. And as long as this is at top dead center, you should not hear any air come out of here or the exhaust. If you hear air coming out of the intake, your valve for the intake needs to be readjusted. It needs to be relaxed. You have too much pressure on that. I've seen somebody tighten it up so hard that at top dead center, the valve wasn't closing all the way. And it could be other restrictions too, carbon, chipped valve seat, or whatever it might be, that it was allowing air to come back through here. And it was backfiring literally up through the intake. Or it could be for the exhaust. If the exhaust valve is not adjusted properly, it'll let air go through the exhaust. But at TDC, and you put a little air in there, and you don't hear it come out the intake or the exhaust, you're good. The valves are good as far as they're closing all the way. Now, they may need to be adjusted a hair. If you hear air coming out the dip tube, that is fine. That's like that 5% on the leak down test. You'll hear a little bit going past the cylinder and past the rings, getting into the crankcase, and you'll hear that just a little bit. If you hear extreme, maybe you have a hole in the piston or something. But it's just a quick way, a quick reference to check. Most people nowadays have air compressors of some type. And I'm not saying put 180 PSI through there, just a little air and you can hold it in. And all I use is this. And I just go in and just put a little air in, and it tells me a story, okay? Say you do that. Say you want to do a compression test. Now, we already talked about the compression testers. This one here is an antique. This one still works today. It's got a Schrader valve in the bottom. Most people say, yep, compression test. Well, if you don't do it right, you're not going to get a good reading, and it may give you a false positive sort of. I go get the leak down test, Harbor Freight, or there's a link in my description. You can pick one up. That is the best way. You can put 100 PSI and you can look at the other gauge to see if the cylinder is actually holding 100 PSI, or it's probably going to be like 95, 98, somewhere in there on a good cylinder. If it's below 90, if it's in like the 60s and 70s, you definitely have a leak somewhere. Probably, most likely, it's going to be in the head gasket, if you're lucky. What I mean by that, the heads will crack. I've seen them. And it's just from lack of maintenance, lack of cleaning down in here. A lot of times people don't understand the importance of cleaning these fins down here, just because this is air-cooled fins. This is an air-cooled motor. This shroud right here, this is the fan. This is the fan that blows the air down over the engine to keep it cool. Now, on those hot days, this thing is just cooking, buddy. You gotta change the oil, not at the recommended hours, but based on case use. And what do I mean by that? I tell people all the time, even with GM, GM trucks and cars and all that, do not wait for the oil life to be at 0. Change it at 50 or 60%. You'll thank me later, I'm telling you. So once we figured out that it could be compression, you do a leak down test, you would disassemble. You're gonna need about 4 gaskets, one on the intake, rocker cover, head gasket, and then the exhaust manifold gasket that's underneath. Another thing you can do, if you don't think the cylinder's firing all the time, you could just simply reach down here cautiously and touch the exhaust to see if it's warm. That'll tell you that if it's firing. I've done that. Now, you have to be cautious. When this thing is running and these spark plug wires are on, it may look like it's safe to touch. Do not grab them while the machine's running. You'll thank me later. I'll show you a video of actual spark coming out of the boot and wire. It's pretty, it's like a stun gun waiting to happen. So once we figured out it's the head gasket, take everything apart, put it back on. There is a procedure of tightening the bolts. You can find it online, I'm sure. The simple thing here is to eliminate one thing after another to help guide you down a path to figure out what could be going on. Is it getting gas? Is it getting spark? I've seen a lot of times where the coil goes bad. In fact, this coil has gone bad in the past, and I just swap it on, put a new one on there. Now under here, there's what's called a stator. There's like a coil with magnets and stuff underneath. It actually creates a magnetic field, comes across the coil to create the energy to come down through the wire to the spark plug to fire in the hole. Fire in the hole. So that's how that all works. This magnet up here, I have very rarely seen it ever go bad unless somebody hits a rock and just stops this engine solid cold. The keyway on the shaft usually gets sheared off and it's pretty much toast. You need a new crank and everything else. You might as well just get a new engine. But as far as starting, it's usually gunked up carburetors. If you know you're getting spark and you see it with a tool, whether it's this one inline or a clamp on one, you can kind of figure out, well, I got my coils and stators, everything's working. Now I just need fuel. I've been known to take a little bottle cap, gasoline. If I don't have starter fluid, I put just a little bit of gasoline in a clean cap and just give it a little shot to the carburetor, and if it starts right up, be careful, it might backfire up through the carburetor, so remove your face from that area. Just a quick way to test to see if it'll fire on the spark plugs. But this is just a quick little way to troubleshoot to get things started and run. I'm going to show you in the video how to, just briefly, not in detail, use the feeler gauges on the rocker arms and how to set the cold setting. Basically, it's an air gap and it's allowing for expansion for the machine. The machine's going to heat up, things are going to get tighter, and you want to leave a little gap for oil to go in because it's a friction point. It's a push rod on a lifter arm, and you don't want it to wear a hole right through it. I've never seen one. I've seen them break. I've seen push rods break, but other than that, I think Troubleshooting 101 is over. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm Robert with Oakwood, and thank you. If you found any value in this, smash that like button, and I appreciate the time. We'll talk to you later.